So the title of my presentation today will be Surrendering to God. And I think it fits with what was said before by Bishop Saye when he spoke about this biased image of God, biased practice of authority, when authority is abused. And the idea of surrendering to God may be also understood in this biased way. You surrender to God, so you forget about yourself, you abandon your will, and you submit to authority. And of course, if this authority is just an earthly, human authority, well, then we are stepping into a dangerous zone. But I will focus on the other meaning of surrendering to God, the meaning that was especially elaborated and explored in contemplative tradition of Catholic Church. And I will try to draw some parallels between this tradition and modern understanding of attachment. Attachment is a psychological theory that speaks about child's behavior in relation to his or her mother. So I will start with this simple picture that represents the basic ideas of attachment. Secure base is a place where, let's say, we could put mother's hand, and the child, when the child is safe and secure, starts to explore his or her surrounding. You see, support my exploration. And the child is free not only to explore physical surrounding, but also relational surrounding, that means relationships, but also his or her inner world. So if the child is free, then of course the child can focus on its own emotions, thoughts, initiative, and ideas. When the child reaches the point where he or she is too far away from the mother, the child will experience distress and will start the way back to reach mother and to reach the safe haven represented by the mother's hand or embrace. The child's needs are to be protected, to be comforted, and to be seen as a source of delight for her mother or his mother. So the four basic ideas of attachment theory developed by John Bowlby in the 60s were that there is an opposition between exploration, freedom, invention, creativity, and seeking protection. If you're not safe, you cannot explore, you're not free. You're living in constant danger, in constant alarm. And of course, these ideas changed very much how the child and the relationship of child and mother was considered in Freudian times. So actually, it turned Freudian vision of child around. We would say that it turned it back from the head to its feet. So the child is, the basic idea is that child is not a source of some libidinal drives and is not putting adults into danger, but vice versa. Adults, which means mother and father, their role is to protect the child and to understand child's needs. So let me now use this picture to represent what is the theoretical background of my presentation, and that is that in recent decades there was abundant research done in the field of attachment theory and also in the field of religious behavior, and it turned out that there are profound and also empirical tested parallels between the circle of security as described by attachment theory and different very important aspects of our religious life. So it was discovered or confirmed that God is seen by his people as a source of support, so as a secure base in terms of Bowlby, and also as a safe haven. So in times of crisis, people turn to God. and they admit their need for God. They also admit their sinfulness, which is a religious way of saying, I want to renew my relationship with God. So at that time, in time of crisis, we are willing to open up and to receive help. This is very important because if you look at the circle of security, if we go back a little bit, we will see in child's behavior, we don't see this opening up. It's, because the picture describes child's behavior in times of 1 year of age, or maybe from 8 months to 16 months of age. And what we don't see in child's behavior is what is going on inside, what is going on inside child's psyche. And if we transmit this picture also to adult behavior, we will see that the problem with adult behavior is that we were trained to be self-sufficient and not to open up to help we could receive from others. So the basic idea is that attachment behavior is not only meant to help us explore the world and to be creative, but also to learn in times of crisis to open up and receive help, which is sometimes even more difficult than just be helpless and cry out. But you have to open up, not to remain a constant victim. We would say not to remain either self-sufficient or to remain in a state where we could just complain that we are not receiving help, and we would then just be constantly angry and constantly complaining. And of course, when attachment ideas were transported to adult behavior, it turned out that this is the major obstacle in our adult relationships, which means that when we are in this position in times of crisis or distress, turmoil, traumatization, the problem is that we have to learn to find help and to open up. If we are to receive help, we have to open up to this help. Now, in religious terms, this would mean that, of course, we have to not only admit our sinfulness, but also in this sense that we are always putting some blame onto ourselves. But this behavior has to be accompanied by an openness of our hearts. And this is even more important than just, piously admit our sinfulness without knowing what actually we did wrong and why would we seek God's help. So in an important article just this year, the most important researchers in this area were somehow summarizing this parallel view of attachment theory, which means our basic behavior in times of crisis and our religious behavior. So it turned out that God is perceived by religious people to be an attachment figure, which means God gives us support and God lets us explore and be his sons, his collaborators, his friends. God is also experienced, I told you this, a source of safety and security. And also all the differences that were discovered in the field of child psychology, child development, and adult relationships, these differences were also reflected in our religious life, which means if we have a certain style of attachment behavior, for example, secure or insecure, or anxious or ambivalent, the differences between these styles are somehow reflected also in our religious life. Simply put, this would mean that if we perceive or if we behave toward our attachment figures in our childhood ambiguously, which means that we were never sure how our parents would react to our needs, then it is very probable that also our image of God and also our religious behavior will mimic this kind of behavior. So the image of God would also be in our mind and heart ambiguous. We would never be sure if God is there to listen to us and to help us. So we would react in a similar way in both realms. Okay, so next I wanted to just show you some empirical studies which proved what I was just saying now, so that participants in different studies actually said that how they, or if they were using questionnaires or observation studies, it turned out that there is a strong correspondence between how they perceive God, how they live their religious life, and how they seek help, how they turn themselves in times of crisis to this God. Another study showing or confirming the correspondence between our attachment behavior toward parents and our attachment behavior in religious life is here, but I will just skip to go to the main thesis.
Tomaž, še 3 minute.
Oh, just 3 minutes. Okay, thank you, Drago. I will just skip now the main idea. So my idea is that the role of surrender is, when we look at the child's behavior, we don't see that there are two aspects of surrender. As I said before, when we look at the child, we don't see that the child has to have an ability or trust to open up, to surrender. And there's also another aspect of surrender. If we, let's say, the mother figure here, the mother has to surrender and let the child go to explore, to be free. So these two aspects of surrender, I think, were not sufficiently explored in the realm of theology and religious life, but they were also not much explored in attachment research, because they were using different concepts like attunement, trust, synchrony, sensitivity, and so on. So my idea is that if we take surrender to mean not only blind obedience, but trust, reliance, openness, mutual attunement, receiving help and support, and opening up to help and support, then we can establish some very fruitful parallels between theology and psychology. And I take surrender in this term to be a crucial ability, especially in our adult life, that we are not self-reliant, but we have to open up in times of stress and crisis. So there are two basic conditions for this type of surrender to take place, either in religious life or in our relationships. So there has to be consistent presence and availability of the person to whom one surrenders, coupled with consistent presence and availability of the surrendering person. And the second condition, that in this mutual attunement or this mutual dialogue or mutual openness, there has to be full acceptance of self, not denial of self, and also full acceptance of emotions and painful negative emotions which are handed over or surrendered. Now, just to finish with this nice quote from the book Prophet by Gibram, he said, "When you love, you should not say, 'God is in my heart,' because this is not the type of surrender that we are now advocating, but you should say, let me see. I am in the heart of God. So I'm being known. I'm not striving to know God, if you take this on the level of knowledge. Not that I strive to know God, but I have to accept and live with the idea that I'm known by God, which is sort of reversal. And it tells us how we can enrich our religious life if we learn how to open up and surrender to God's embrace. Thank you very much for your attention.